Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Untamed Ink. I'm Jasmine, a B2B marketer, and I'm flying solo today while my wonderful co host Alex soaks up the sun in Bali. Alex, if you're listening, I hope you had an amazing time. Apologies for the background noise if you can hear anything. The unit upstairs is doing renovation work, but as they say, the show must go on. So hopefully the noise reduction actually works. If you're new to the show, Alex and I started this podcast because we wanted a space to share our perspectives and experiences across work, mental health, coffee, relationships, and more. We normally start with a retelling of an untamed moment that we had recently. And honestly, I've had such uneventful weeks that I really struggled this time. I genuinely think that I'm a boring person and I tend to normally just do my day to day. And especially since it's reaching peak summertime in Dubai, there's less and less to do. So there's less opportunity to get a little untamed. But as to not break traditions, in episode 5 of this podcast, I'll share a little story. Every one day each week, I co-work with my friend Lisa. Shout out to Lisa, the absolute gem. There's an app here called Let's Work that partners up with cafes around the city. And when you check into a spot on the app, you get unlimited coffee and tea for a set rate. There are also other perks as well, but I'm not sponsored by them yet, so I won't rave too much about them. I'm going to also preface this story by saying that I'm quite the coffee snob and I tend to have my coffee as pure as possible. No sugar, no flavoring, milk at the most. So Lisa and I, we tend to go to the same place on the same day every week. So the staff there know us. And because we're both checked into Let's Work at this venue, we get the unlimited coffee. Recently, during one of these co-working sessions, I decided to break my rule and I ordered what Lisa was having, iced latte with sugar syrup. Normally, the barista on duty would add just a dash of sugar syrup for Lisa, but this time we were being served by the manager and she added like this much of sugar syrup. So much that it was actually really difficult to mix it into the iced latte. I know we could have asked them to make a new one, but being the kind people that we are, we took the drink anyway. And ladies and gentlemen, I made a massive mistake there. I was so high on sugar and caffeine that I was basically mentally useless. I couldn't form a coherent sentence without drifting off into another line of thought. I couldn't work on a single thing. I think I must have done like 5 different things at once and finished none of them. I genuinely don't remember what happened during those few hours of absolute mental chaos. And that was my untamed moment. I don't know if you want to count that as untamed, but like I said, I feel like I'm relatively boring otherwise. So that's what you get. Anyway, today we'll be diving into a topic that is near and dear to many of us: social media. More specifically, we're going to be looking into the impact of social media on our relationships. Some people are going to get riled up about this, in which case I'll say, you are probably doing something wrong, and I reckon it's a you problem that you need to get sorted out, or you'll never find yourself in a happy relationship. And I'll leave it like that. Whether you're scrolling through Instagram, posting a photo of yourself doing a viral dance on TikTok, keeping it professional on LinkedIn, social media has become a significant part of our daily lives. But what does that mean for our relationships? Are we more connected or are we drifting apart? That's what we'll be diving into today. I'm going to start off by defining what I mean by social media because, strangely enough, different people have different definitions for this. Now, when I talk about social media, even in my day-to-day, I tend to mean apps like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Snapchat. Apps like WhatsApp, Viber, Signal, Telegram come under the banner of messaging apps for me, although some people like to group apps like these under social media as well. To each their own, I suppose. With that out of the way, let's kick things off by acknowledging that social media isn't inherently good or bad. But I know we all have our personal opinions on where this sits on the spectrum. Ultimately, it's a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends on how we use it. We can't deny that the internet has revolutionized the way that we communicate, offering instant connectivity across the globe. Within seconds, I can chat about a silly animal video with my family in Malaysia or Germany and share a laugh with Alex in Nepal. In fact, some of you watching this might have first caught wind of Untamed Ink from our social channels, in which case, hello! Social media has added a new layer to this connectivity, allowing us to broadcast updates and share memories on a broader scale, even with people we don't know. But as you can imagine, this constant connectivity comes with its own set of challenges. But let's first talk about the positives of social media and all the positives that it has brought to our relationship across the board, our relationships across the board. Number one, it has enhanced connectivity. Social media has made it easier to stay updated with friends and family, regardless of geographical distances. Seeing photos, reading updates, and engaging with social posts can help us feel more connected to our loved ones' daily lives, even if in a somewhat simulated way. Emphasis on the word simulated. I'll be digging into that a little later on. As we all know, this feature of social media has been particularly important during times when physical gatherings were restricted. And for me personally, and I'm sure Alex will agree, it has been particularly useful with my professional presence as I've grown a healthy professional network on LinkedIn. Shout out to Amaya, Haya, Johnny, and Christy. Number two, it has expanded dating horizons. The digital age has expanded the dating pool, and I can't deny that, enabling people to connect with potential partners beyond their immediate circles. And I don't mean through dating apps either. That is a whole episode in and of itself. I actually mean people meeting virtually through social media apps. I personally know of a couple who met on Instagram, and I believe one of them had popped up on the other's explore feed. They seem to be the only two people in the village that they were both from, well, the two young people in the village that they were both from during the pandemic, as it seemed like no one else had gone back during lockdown. And I think they've been together for about 4 years now. Couldn't know. Yeah, so let's talk about the negatives of social media, in which case I'll preface this segment by admitting that I personally have a negative bias against social media, which is absolutely hypocritical coming from someone co-hosting a podcast and therefore needing to utilize social media to boost its reach. Honestly speaking, it is one aspect of running this podcast. It is the one aspect of running this podcast that I really hate. I miss the times when social media was purely organic and we weren't all at the mercy of various AI-driven algorithms. But how else am I supposed to grow the podcast in this day and age? Anyway, let's talk about some of the negatives of social media. Number one, it has fueled functional impairments. Studies such as the systematic review done by O'Day and Heimberg in 2021 have found that it is possible for people with social anxiety to experience continued functional impairments. For example, being uncomfortable or unable to form and engage in face-to-face interactions when they replace in-person interactions with social media use. They also found that socially anxious and lonely individuals appear to prefer and seek out online social interactions, which then perpetuates the cycle. Again, unfortunately, I do know someone who was diagnosed with chronic anxiety, and I feel like social media has only wrecked his social and dating experiences in recent years. According to a 2023 paper by Roberts and David in the Canadian Journal of Behavioral Science, Heavy users of social media are more likely to experience negative consequences, such as feeling socially disconnected and experiencing greater stress and lower well-being. Number two, it diminishes quality time. Excessive reliance on social media interactions over face-to-face communication can hinder the formation of new relationships and strain existing ones. Not only is this fact reflected within studies such as Christensen's 2018 thesis, but I've experienced this firsthand, and I'm pretty sure you have too. When I was in secondary school, I used to love the song Dark Blue by Jack's Mannequin. I'll read you a line from the chorus because I'm way too shy to risk singing off key. And it goes like this. Dark blue, have you ever been alone in a crowded room? This line from the chorus hits home even more today. Have you ever been in a room full of people only to realize that everyone's glued to their phones? I definitely have. It is unfortunately a common sight, and it speaks volumes about how social media can intrude our real world connections. I've been in situations where I'd be out with friends or family and they'd be absolutely glued to their smartphones. And it kind of sucks, if I'm honest. Number three, reduces relationship satisfaction. The overuse of social media can lead to conflicts, decreased satisfaction, and negative outcomes in relationships, such as the phenomenon of phobbing, which is a word I learned while researching this topic. Phobbing is essentially the act of snubbing a person in a social setting by focusing on one's phone. For example, if two people sit down for a face-to-face conversation and one continues to scroll on social media and check notifications, that person is phobbing the other. A 2019 study by Al-Sadaf and O'Donnell found, and I quote, phobbing heightened feelings of jealousy between romantic partners, weakened the bond between them, lowered their relationship satisfaction, and increased their rates of depression. Phobbing was perceived as rude, offensive, and a violation of social norms. It undermines perceptions of empathetic concern, closeness, and interpersonal trust and conversation quality. I can't help but agree with the sentiment, although I will admit that I myself have been a perpetrator of phobbing. I've been a lot better at that in recent years. I don't have social media apps on my phone, and when I'm out with my partner, friends, family, I will physically put my phone away. But, treat the people the way that you want to be treated, which works sometimes. Number four, social media encourages infidelity-related behaviors. Social media can also encourage behaviors that feel like infidelity. Liking and commenting on someone else's posts can lead to blatant misunderstandings and jealousy. The line between friendly interaction and something more can easily blur, causing friction in relationships, especially when concepts like emotional cheating come into play, with these actions potentially leading to discontent, breakups, or divorce. Here's another instance where I need to highlight the word simulated again. You might have heard of the term parasocial relationship, an imaginary feeling of closeness that can develop when someone passively consumes a lot of content about another person or only has limited text-based online interactions, even if the other person hardly knows anything about them in reality. When someone has developed a parasocial relationship, the lines and boundaries can blur. They might believe that there's something more to the relationship when there isn't really. A partner could greatly misinterpret this one-sided crossing of the boundary and believe that you could be emotionally cheating on them. But once you've sent or posted a photo or message, you lose control over what happens next. So how the heck could you explain to your partner that this other person has got the wrong idea and that the other person seemed to have formed a parasocial relationship with you and that you're not actually emotionally cheating on them? I'll get to that in a bit. Number 5, the unrealistic portrayal of real relationships. Social media often showcases curated and idealized versions of reality, leading to unrealistic relationship expectations, especially. And I don't mean just from social media influencers either. One major issue is the concept of social comparison. We scroll through feeds filled with curated, often idealized snapshots of other people's lives. In our case for today, those with seemingly perfect relationships. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing our own lives to these highlight reels, leading to feelings of inadequacy and dissatisfaction. Social media has a horrible habit of picking at our insecurities, which then leads to a strain on our relationships when you're thinking, why don't you show off what me and our relationship on your on your socials like this other person does? Although, funnily enough, I myself have used this as a barometer to see if a person actually sees me as a friend or not. And it was quite useful in those instances, if I do say so myself. But I don't recommend doing this for romantic relationships because that's just silly. Number 6, digital surveillance and jealousy. Our modern digital world has a tendency to breed jealousy and insecurity at a more rapid scale, with partners misinterpreting comments, likes, or connections, and worst of all, engaging in unhealthy surveillance. Platforms like Instagram and Snapchat can make it easy to keep tabs on our partner's activities, leading to trust issues and obsessive behaviors. Unhealthy surveillance can range from checking how your partner is followed on any given platform to infringing on their privacy by checking their phone when they're not looking. This digital surveillance can strain even the healthiest of relationships. Thankfully, not all is lost. There are ways that we can mitigate or at least manage the negative effects that social media brings to our relationships. Unfortunately, they're not the easiest things to do, especially if you're not genuinely willing to. But let's go through them one by one anyway. Firstly, communicate openly about digital boundaries. First and foremost, communicate openly about your digital boundaries. If you don't have any, now is a great time to start thinking about them. Discuss what is and isn't acceptable regarding social media interactions and ensure that you're on the same page with your partner. Also, discuss what you're both comfortable with sharing publicly on social media. Some people are more private and may not appreciate having their personal life blasted online. So, here are a few questions to ask. Is it okay to tag you in posts or check in places together? Is it okay to post about our relationship publicly? Is it okay to follow or friend other people in my life? What are the expectations for communication through texting or social media? Is it okay to use each other's devices? And if yes, when is it okay? Have an open discussion with your partner about what you're both comfortable with in terms of social media, texting, device usage, and so on. Agree on clear expectations and rules, especially within the early stages of dating. But if you're already a few years in, it's better late than never to have these discussions. Remember to be respectful, and digital boundaries can change as your relationship evolves, just like any other boundary. Tip number 2, respect each other's privacy and autonomy. This could be housed under the previous point, but I think it deserves its own. It's crucial to trust your partner and avoid snooping through their social media accounts. Establishing trust and respecting boundaries is crucial for a healthy relationship. Don't demand each other's passwords or access to devices or social media accounts. Don't snoop into your partner's devices when they are not looking or when they're not around. Regardless of whether you're in a couple or a throuple or whatever you want to call it, all parties involved are entitled to a sense of digital privacy and independence. But if you're uncomfortable with how your partner uses social media, discuss it with them. If you feel like your partner may be cheating on you, discuss it with them respectfully. You should never allow yourself to justify snooping because that's just a grave violation of trust. Just remember that there are other more obvious and egregious signs of infidelity than just following and or chatting with a random person online. Tip number 3, limit excessive social media use and phubbing. In relationships, we all make bids for connection. This can be as simple as asking a question or reaching for a hand, or it can be more involved, such as seeking emotional support from a partner during a difficult time. Regardless of the bids, a partner can either turn towards you, respond positively, turn away, intentionally or unintentionally ignore, or turn against you, responding negatively. A study done by Dr. John Gottman revealed that in healthy relationships, couples respond positively to one another's bids about 96% of the time. So avoid constantly checking your phone or social media when spending time with your partner. Make a conscious effort to be present and engaged during your interactions. One really helpful thing for me personally is not having any social media apps installed on my phone. If I want to scroll on my LinkedIn or Twitter, I'll have to do it on my laptop. And honestly, it's not as mentally satisfying as doing it on my phone. So I find that I don't fall into rabbit holes that easily. Or if you're unwilling to get rid of social media off of your phone, if you're like me, you need to use Instagram to promote your podcast, try hiding the app from your screen. I found that adding an additional barrier to accessing social media can make the temptations a bit weaker. Or if you're only using social media for work purposes like me, consider using social media managers like Buffer or Later. I am personally trying to set up Buffer to manage posting on Instagram so I can delete it from my phone for good. Tip number 4, create tech-free time and activities. Set aside dedicated time to be together without digital distractions. Engage in offline activities if possible and quality time to nurture your connection. Better yet, designate certain times or activities when phones are completely off limits. This could be during meals, date nights, your kids' sporting events, or family gatherings in general. Physically put your phone away, out of arm's reach, into your partner's bag or your bag, for example, or even into the next room. If you have a smartwatch, put it into do not disturb or airplane mode so the buzzing of notifications can't distract you during this time. Focus on enjoying each other's company without digital distractions. Back when phones were just kicking off, my mum made the dinner table a no phone zone. We would all talk about our individual days or discuss whatever big piece of news was making the rounds that day. I'm a bit nostalgic for those days, if I'm honest. And if I am fortunate to have kids one day, this is definitely going to be a rule in my household. Tip number 5, address any digital boundary violations. Recognizing who has crossed a boundary and how often that person does it is important. If one partner crosses a boundary, regardless of mental, physical, digital, communicate openly about it, and work to re-establish trust and healthy habits. But it's so important to do this in a respectful way. Don't be confrontational. Never be confrontational. For example, if you know that your partner was using their phone when it should have been phone-free time, gently nudge them and say something like, hey, I really enjoy our phone-free time together because it makes me feel more connected to you. How about we put our phones away for the next hour? It is so important to wait until they've put down their phones before you nudge them. If your partner has a phone addiction, having their phone use interrupted may trigger feelings of withdrawal or irritability, similar to any other type of addiction. Being interrupted while using their phone could serve as a reminder that they're devoting a lot more time to their device rather than you, which could make them feel guilty or defensive. Avoid accusatory language and instead focus on how the violation made you feel. Listen to your partner's perspective and try to understand their motivations or reasons for crossing the boundary, because there may be a misunderstanding to clear up. But you can both work to acknowledge that trust has been broken and work together to rebuild it. This may involve increased transparency, accountability, or renegotiating the boundary. Be sure to keep the interaction light and positive throughout. So, where does this leave us? Social media is such a powerful tool that has reshaped our relationships in profound ways. It offers unparalleled opportunities for connection, but also presents new challenges. The key is mindful usage. Set boundaries, communicate openly and clearly, and don't be afraid to take breaks. Instagram can wait. Ultimately, the quality of our relationships depend on our ability to balance our online interactions with real-world interactions. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How has social media impacted your relationships? Have you faced any challenges or found any tips for maintaining balance? Share your stories and let's continue the conversation in the comments. And that is it for today's episode of Untamed Ink. I hope you found this discussion insightful. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a nice comment and sharing it with your friends or someone who might need a little reminder to get off their phones. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so you don't miss out on future episodes. Until next time, this is Jasmine signing off. Bye.